I answered some of my questions, like the main. it'll be the last time.
What did I do with my darn
It'll
phone?
be the last. Come here. Come here, please.
That's
Make me show my color off in front of people. Should I cross my leg like this? Okay.
oh, mama.
Okay, testing. Can everyone hear me? Hello, thank you all for being here today for Dismantling Racism, book talk with Dr. Tina Harris. My name is Maria Dayrosh. I am a graduate assistant for the Riley Center of Media and Public Affairs here at the Manship School. And before we get started, I just want to go over a few housekeeping notes. First, please silence your cell phones. We do encourage tweeting or Xing, Instagramming, Snapchatting, and all other social media engagement. Please tag us if you do. Secondly, we will have built-in time at the end of today's conversation for our speaker to answer some audience questions. So please hold all your questions till the end of the interview. And I'd also like to mention that Dr. Harris will be raffling off some of her books as well as selling a few copies today. So stick around and she will be available for a signing. And now I'll be happy to turn it over to Dr. Janae Slocum, Director of the Riley Center, for some welcoming words.
Thank you, Maria. Hi, everybody, and welcome. Another element about the raffle, if you didn't get a little raffle ticket, you want to make sure that you get one before we start pulling those tickets. So you want to make sure that you get an opportunity. Yeah, we're here to talk about Dr. Tina Harris's book. It came out in November officially, I believe, so it's brand new. And it's Dismantling Racism, One Relationship at a Time. And what I love about it is it kind of turns the systemic racism idea on its head a little bit and really comes from that individual perspective of how we interact with other people in our personal relationships. Her hope is to inspire us all to think about the relationships that we have and the relationships that we can develop and how that impacts our broader society. During this interview, she's going to encourage you to both do that, but make sure that you're thinking about how these relationships can help diminish the divides that we have. So I'd like to just tell you a little bit more about Dr. Harris, and I don't want to miss one detail, so forgive me. I'm gonna read a little bit. So Dr. Harris is an internationally renowned interracial communication scholar. Her interests are in race, media representation, and racial social justice. She's also the Douglas L. Manship Senior Dory Maynard Endowed Chair of Race, Media, and Cultural Literacy here at LSU. And by the way, that's the only chair of that kind in the United States. Her pedagogy, research and service, and we still are from Georgia, and service at LSU are driven by her desire to empower others with the communication and critical thinking skills necessary for becoming global citizens. The end goal of these efforts is to equip students and audience members and anyone who reads this book with an applied approach where theory leads to practice in a world where racial, ethnic, and cultural diversity are a welcome inevitability. Conducting the interviews this evening, we have Denetria Lee, or Nikki. Nikki is a graduate student here at the Manship School. She's working on her master's degree. She was the first, also this is great, to receive an LSU Bachelor of Arts degree from the newly, at the time, created African and African American Studies degree program. So congratulations, Nikki. And she'll be finishing up with us in the summer, so she says.
He will.
Of course. Oh, I thought,
No,
I was
no.
just saying she could finish earlier.
Yeah.
She's also a Baton Rouge native. And, growing up here in Louisiana, the state's customs and cultural practices and institutions really shape the way she sees life and her approach to her studies and her work. Her education and work reflect this, and, she's focused on race, gender, entertainment, politics, popular culture, and media. And so with that, Nikki, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Slocum. I feel like, am I heard? Okay. All right. Hi, Dr. Harris.
Hi, Nikki.
All right, let's get this discussion started. I'm excited. So your book opens with a reference to George Floyd's murder and the resulting protest in the summer of 2020. But you've obviously been in the game of interracial communications for far longer. So my question is, considering 25 years ago there was no George Floyd or Trayvon Martin, no Black Lives Matter, no public discourse about critical race theory, can you give us some background as to what drew you into this line of communication studies?
Well, I have to be honest and let you all know that when I graduated from high school, I wanted to be a cosmetologist. And my mother was like, no, you are not. And I was so angry with her because I wanted to do the nails and the makeup and the hair. And she was like, you're going to go to college. And I was very mad about that. I mean, so mad that I actually went to college. And here I am all these years later. But I appreciate what she did because she saw something in me that I didn't know that I had. And I've had many other professors who saw talents in me and gifts that they really wanted to nurture, and they pulled those out of me, and I try to do that in kind as far as like giving back. But more importantly, I think that something that I noticed as I was studying many years ago, when I say it was like in 19, I'm not going to tell you all the year, you all probably can go online and check it out, but it sounds like it was eons ago, and it was. But anyway, I noticed that when I was reading journal articles about interpersonal communication, there was very little attention given to race. I would say, oh, well, this is interesting, but this has nothing to do with me at all. And so I did not know what track I was going to take in terms of seeing my future, but I felt like there was a void that needed to be filled. And so I was like, well, in order for me to relate to what I'm reading, I need to be putting me, so to speak, in the research, and my advisors and other faculty that were encouraging me and mentoring me encourage that. I mean, so they were like, yes, like you can prioritize race, that is okay. And I was like, okay, well, good. And it wasn't like they gave me permission, but they just kind of empowered me to do that.
Okay.
Oh, and I do want to add that my family and I lived in Spain for 4.5 years when I was little. So Spanish was my first language. And having that experience just really opened my eyes to, I guess, a very simplistic way of looking at human diversity, which is, I mean, I love everybody, and I just wish we all could just get along. I don't like war, I don't like conflict, and I just wish that we could appreciate each other, and that's a very simplistic way of thinking, but that's how I approach the world.
And so when you were in Spain with your family, would you categorize the amount of interracial communication that you had with others outside of school as average or above average, Spain versus when you came back to the United States?
I was 2.5, so I'm gonna say it was above average.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, but it was wonderful to me. I mean, my dad would, tell me. He told my mom. He was talking with our housekeeper. We were not rich, just so we're clear. In military families, it was common for them or us to have a housekeeper at the time, and I stayed at home, with Milagros, every day while my siblings went to school. And my dad came home one day and he was like, why can't I speak to my child? I mean, she's speaking Spanish, and my dad's obviously first language, is English. And so he was just like, I can't talk to her. And I was like, well, I don't know. I was a child. So, I just kind of went with it. But that experience, so we lived there for 4.5 years, really just opened me up to so much. I mean, that's why I love culture and diversity. And I mean, I love it all. And I can't thank them enough for having done that.
So you were 6-ish when you...
2.5, and then when I was 7, we moved to Florida. And there I was able to take Spanish in elementary school. And so that kind of fed my interest and passion for culture, and that continued when we moved to Georgia when I was 11.
Okay.
That was nurtured,
Okay.
but it was like a fire was fanned within me, but there weren't that many opportunities for intercultural communication geographically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So intercultural communication was introduced by scholars as a way to understand human difference, but other scholars saw that there was a lack of attention given to interracial communication.
Is that me? Okay, we'll just go with the flow. Okay.
So why does the communication field make a distinction between intercultural communication and interracial communication?
Okay, the distinction between interracial and intercultural communication is very important. So intercultural refers to obviously culture, and that means we're focused on values, beliefs, and attitudes that are associated with a person's culture, and that's learned. And then we have race, and I believe that race is really important because people are oftentimes not associated with a specific culture. So if you were to ask me what my culture is, I don't know. I mean, I'm from the U.S. We have a U.S. culture, but as far as like my ethnicity, I don't really, well, not 23andMe, but Ancestry.com told me what mine is. I would have to like do some research to find out what my culture and ethnicity are, but I identify, with my race more so than I do culture or ethnicity. And that distinction is really important because when we talk about intercultural, that almost, I don't want to say it dismisses, but it doesn't afford us the opportunity to talk about race. Race is a very difficult topic to discuss, and most people don't want to talk about it, but I want to talk about it all the time. I do take breaks, but I think it's important for us to center interracial communication because that's the key to so many different things. We live in a diverse world, and we have to have the communication skills necessary to function in order to know that we have these differences and we can work through them. They're not a barrier, but they're a bridge. I like that. Oh, sorry.
So before 2020, religion, politics, money, and race were mostly considered taboo topics to be avoided in mixed company. Perhaps because they're polarizing, or perhaps. Oh, okay.
Everybody, a few mics.
So perhaps because they're polarizing, or because Mark Twain actually said that there were things not to be discussed in polite company. So much of that seemed to change in 2020, and that year highlighted how that common practice is what had allowed willful ignorance and a cognitive dissonance to thrive among many white Americans when it came to racial injustice. Do you remember the first time that you had a transparent or vulnerable racial conversation in polite or mixed company? And could you share some context?
I cannot tell you the first conversation that I've had. I've had so many. You gave me some time to like think about that, and I thought maybe this was the first time, but it wasn't really true conversation. It was a very innocent interaction. So I was, in my neighborhood, and I had two best friends, as much of a best friend as you can have with, another kid in your neighborhood. And so I was the new kid on the block, and I'm hanging out with these two young girls, and one is white, one is Jewish, and I'm black, and I'm like, oh, look at the diversity. And then I took a risk, and I was like, oh, let me ask them like who their best friend is. And I'm like, surely it's gonna be me. And then I asked, and they'd say to each other, and I was like, I was so hurt. I was like, they didn't even pick me. I was like, wait a minute. I mean, so I didn't know if it was racial, was it cultural, is it because I'm new? And I just kind of like moved forward, from that. And I never did have a talk to say, can you help me like process this? I mean, because it was minor. I don't know why I even asked that. I set myself up for pain. But anyway, I can't tell you the exact conversation that I've had, but I know that there have been many times where I've broached the conversation, or sometimes I've just had those conversations, and people, who know me, either socially or professionally, they know race is going to come up in some way. And sometimes I just kind of ease into it, and sometimes I'm just, very direct. But I think that my approach is inviting, so people don't feel too defensive. It's just natural.
Okay. So, the book mentions barriers that prevent us from engaging in meaningful interracial communication and dialogue. And so the barriers are intergroup contact and relationship quality, distrust utilitarianism, performative support, and the idea that BIPOC people are the spokesperson for the entire race. And previous research supports the idea that our most significant interracial communication occurs at school or work. And I'd like to discuss the third barrier, which is performative support or outrage. So performative support or outrage is the public support of BIPOC individuals, and you say that it involves a very emotional, feigned public response to racial injustices. So the media frequently documents activism regarding various political, humanitarian, and other current issues on college campuses, and we're on a college campus. What do you think, why do you think performative support or outrage is frequently rampant on college campuses and or social media as opposed to other places?
I think it is because we all come here, whether we're students or faculty, seeking an opportunity to have open dialogue about different issues. We're here to grow, we're here to learn, and even though I've been in this game for a very long time, I'm still learning and growing, and with that comes an expectation or an assumption that we're going to be better communicators, we're going to have more empathy towards each other, and as a result, when people are gaining this knowledge, they're going to respond to real world issues and situations in a more empathic, mindful, and thoughtful way. But then when you have different policies that are emerging or things are being dismantled, dismantling racism? No, when you have things that are being dismantled or public rhetoric that is contradictory to things that are going on behind the scenes, then that's when people are questioning what they're observing. And I think that because we're in these spaces, we do have the opportunity to engage in these conversations, and there is a hope that there's going to be change, but then people see a contradiction. So it's like, wait a minute, we're having these conversations in the classroom or wherever on campus, but then you go out and you might see someone. I'll give you a quick example, even though it's not related to college. I remember in high school, in my high school, when I first started going there, I think it was 50-50. Then we had white flight, so it went 60-40, 70-30. I hope my math is right on that. And then, so I was in the majority at that point. And I remember being friendly with all of my other, friends in high school. And then I remember going to a grocery store or something, I don't know. We were driving, and then a car full of white kids drove by, and they called us the N-word. And I was like, aren't those the I was gonna say the twins, but whatever. Anyway, I was like, I know them. And they're calling me the N-word? I mean, that really stuck with me. And so it just showed me that even though many years have passed, that you can be in a space where you're being encouraged to have these conversations, but not everyone is open to them. And so I think that going back to your question as far as performative outrage, people have a public face that they're presenting to the world that tells people that I'm concerned about these issues, et cetera. They can use their social media, to speak out against these systems of oppression, but then behind the scenes, they might be contradicting that, or they may not be doing anything at all. And that was something that was really concerning to me, because I'm having private conversations with people who are just like, did you see what so-and-so posted on here? Or I know that they would just tell me about their own personal experiences, seeing these contradictions. And I just thought, wow, that was another inspiration for writing the book.
Okay, so this is going to kind of lead into what you were saying about seeing people's social media. So it's an election year, And since the 2016 presidential election, racism and politics have become glaringly commingled. And in 2021, the Pew Research Center conducted a survey that showed that Republicans are more likely than Democrats to say that the nation has made a lot of racial progress, progress towards racial equity, actually. And also, Republicans are far more likely than Democrats to say that increased attention to the history of slavery and racism is bad for the country. Is it fair to assume that a person's politics are an indication of their propensity towards racism?
No, it is not fair to make that assumption. Because if we do, I personally believe that I'll just speak for myself, that if I were to stereotype someone based on their political affiliation, I'm doing the very thing that I don't want them to do in terms of stereotyping me. I also want to stress that we have become very political in very detrimental ways. And people we want to make sense of the world that we live in. And so if we see somebody is associated with this party, then we have all of these assumptions that we're making about them, regardless of which party it is. And that's a problem. I mean, that's creating a barrier that I don't think that we can get through. I mean, we can get through it, but I think we have to really give careful thought to the fact that racism is a system. It's perpetuated by institutions, and we are all people who are part of these institutions. These institutions don't just exist. These are, I guess we could kind of think of them like ideological buildings, and that we all are housed in them. And so it depends on what house you live in, what subdivision you live in, et cetera, as far as like what you're going to think and believe. We're all socialized to think and believe certain ways. And we have to, in my opinion, work towards having common ground and understanding each other, recognizing that everyone does not have equal access to all opportunities, and what can we do to level the playing field.
Okay. So much of dismantling racism is predicated on the belief in the tenets of critical race theory. And so it's also common knowledge that critical race theory has been under attack since 2020. How do you think attacks on critical race theory will affect interracial communication within the family?
Well, first, I'd like to say that I don't think that most people know what critical race theory is. And I was very concerned when I would see on the news where they were reporting and saying that they don't need to be teaching critical race theory in the elementary schools. I'm like, well, what children are learning about critical race theory? I only know that it's been taught, at the undergraduate, but definitely graduate, level. And so, people were misconstruing it. They don't know the history. They don't know why it was introduced. And so I think Kimberly Crenshaw and many others, Derek Bell, and others who did the work to lay down the foundation. I personally love critical race theory because I'm a nerd like that. But for me, critical race theory does an excellent job of illustrating for us how nearly everything that we engage in society is the product of some kind of systemic oppression. So we've got racism, classism, sexism, heteronormativism, and there are many other isms, ableism, et cetera, that are out there that continue to disenfranchise people. When it comes to families, I don't believe that families are talking about critical race theory. And if we're talking about it in my family, I probably have gone home and I'm like, oh, family, guess what? And they're like, sit down and be quiet. No, they wouldn't tell me that, but they would want to have other conversations about other things. But I think that we need to have these conversations in our families so that families can be better equipped to send, and I was going to say our people. I don't have any children, so I can send my dog Jack out into the world. But I can help other people have the skills to empower their children, other family members with knowledge so that we know that this is what racism is, this is what effective race relations are, so that we can just be, better people. I have a friend who, I would say, I'm not sure exactly, well, I don't know if it was before COVID, during COVID, but at some point within like the last 4 years, she told me that she and her family, I think it was on the heels of George Floyd's murder, that she and her family, she's a white woman, she created a syllabus for them. So I was posting readings and things like that on my Facebook page, and she was doing her own research, and she was like, oh yeah, we have a syllabus. And so she had required readings, for her sons. And so I apologized to them if they were mad at me for that. No, they probably appreciated it because their mom did it. But their parent, she and her husband, had this syllabus for them to like read and to become more knowledgeable. And so I think that families should take the opportunity to learn what is critical race theory and other things related to racism, so that they can just be equipped. And this is for everyone, not just, we don't want to assume that it's just white people, but for everyone needs to be knowledgeable.
So the chapter about interracial friendships was one of my favorites. You said that in order for productive interracial communication to occur, a shift in how we conceptualize diversity has to occur, meaning that we must all take a step back and assess how racially or ethnically diverse our friend groups are. So the relational inventory that you describe has 4 additional steps after the step. The step back is the first step. Would you tell us about the other 4 steps?
I will. And so those 4 steps are, I feel like I'm lecturing in class. All the steps are as follows. Evaluate friendship/racial ethnic diversity, assess interracial ideological indoctrination, identify individual contributions to structural segregation, commit to a relational approach to advancing racial justice efforts, and identify essential qualities for interracial friendships. So essentially what I'm arguing is, that we need to all just sit back and look at the makeup of our friendships. How diverse are they? I mean, I did that myself, and I'm like, I have friends, scattered, throughout the country, and maybe even the world. But I'm like, when I pull my close friends together, how diverse is it? And something that really inspired me to develop this particular chapter, and it was like looking at on Facebook, and I know older folks were the ones who were on Facebook, and the younger folks are on Instagram, and I love TikTok, but whatever. But when I'm on social media, I'm looking at these pictures that people are posting of not historic, but momentous occasions. So you've got your weddings, and you've got girlfriends' weekends and whatnot. And I'm like, most of these networks are same race people, or you might have one person who is of a different race. And I would be guilty of that as well. And so the charge is to sit down and really look at what your network looks like, and then for the second one, where you assess your ideologies, think about how you were socialized to have interracial friendships, or were you? Did your parents say, I know that people have said that parents might explicitly say you cannot date someone of a different race, but do they tell you that you can't have a friend who's of a different race? Was it subconscious? Was it overt, or was there no message at all? So having to think about how we're socialized, and then what have I done to contribute to that segregation? So have I purposely said I don't want to have a friend who doesn't look like me? I have not said that. I like everybody, so I'm trying to be communal and pull everybody in. So I'm not guilty of that, but maybe I have been, and I'm not aware of that. I should be committing to a relational approach to advancing racial justice. So that means making genuine, making authentic connections with people who don't look like me. And I'm not just going to say, hey, you know what? I don't have any really close white female friends. I'm just going to go out and I'm going to become friends with Dr. Soudermilk there. That's not going to happen. I mean, we're friends, but I should not make it my mission, because then it becomes inauthentic. And lastly, identify essential qualities for interracial friendships. One of my best friends is a white female, and I have other white women who are good friends. And she in particular is very empathic to me. I'm empathic to her, and I might tell her some things, or she might tell me something about the news, and I'm like, yeah, it's draining. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to burden you today. I'm like, girl, it is okay. You did not burden me, and we have that open communication. And so I think if we are to sit down, dissect our relationships, and be open to having relationships with people who don't look like us, then we can move forward.
Okay, so the chapter after the interracial friendships is IRRs, or interracial romantic relationships. And so the chapter begins with the argument that interracial romantic relationships are a window into the soul of the United States when it comes to race relations and interracial communications. So my question is, why IRRs, or interracial romantic relationships, as opposed to interracial professional relationships? And I thought of this question when I was thinking about the ties of labor and race and just to the history of the country, or even interracial friendships. Why is it that interracial romantic relationships? And I know in the book you use the trickle-down theory to illustrate the interconnectedness between racist ideologies and IRRs. Can you explain a little bit more?
I can. I think that the reason why I included that is I have always been fascinated by interracial relationships and how society has had a significant influence on them. So we know way back in the day there were anti-miscegenation laws that made it illegal, and they primarily made relationships between whites and non-whites illegal. And then in 1967 that was overturned. I've noticed throughout my life, primarily, from teaching and like some personal experience, that when you bring up interracial romantic, everybody's okay with interracial friendships, but when you bring in interracial romantic relationships, that's when people's real attitudes come out. I've had students write reaction papers about their experiences with interracial relationships, and they have really stuck out to me. One in particular was a student who wrote about, she's a white woman dating a white man, and she wrote that when her white boyfriend learned that she had dated a black guy, he terminated the relationship because he said he did not want her lips on him because she had kissed a black man. And then I had another student, and this has stuck with me for many years, who I was teaching summer school at the time, and she was in the class, white woman who was engaged in the class, and this was when O.J. Simpson was on trial. We're not going to talk about the verdict, but he was on trial, and she at the time was dating a black man, and her family told her, if you continue to date him, you're going to end up just like Nicole Brown Simpson. And I was like, so every black man is a murderer? So you're going to, Yeah, so she was like, no. She was recently divorced and had been married to a white man. And she told her family, so you want me to break up with this black man who has treated me way better than my white ex? And they said yes. So the class progresses. I thank her for telling her story. And a few weeks go by, I'm like, wait a minute. I noticed that she had not been coming, and I was like, where is she? Email was introduced, but it wasn't like it is now. So I really couldn't just reach out to her and find out how she was doing. But I saw that she was no longer in the class, and I was like, that's kind of strange. And I was like, I really wish I knew how she was doing because she just disappeared. And she contacted me that fall, and she said, I just wanted you to know, and students will not contact you to let you know why they dropped their class. They drop the class and keep it moving. But it was unique to me that she did this. She said, my father dropped me. He pretty much did not pay her tuition because she stayed in that relationship with that guy. And she just wanted me to know that. And I was so hurt. I was like, it had nothing to do with me, but I was like, I am so sorry that you had to deal with that. And so my point is that I don't know if they were friends before they got into a relationship and if her family was okay with that, but I saw not every experience that I have been told about has not been to that extreme, but there have been some where people have said, my family has told me that they will cut me off, I will not be in my grandparents' will, etc. And so I've just noticed that when people tend to cross that line, that's when people's true feelings, will come out about different racial groups. And it's not just black and white, other racial compositions are in there as well, and it's a problem. And so that's a topic that I wish I had the time to delve into more, but it's quite telling, I think.
So that's one of the 3 tenets, interracial romantic relationships, that are part of the trickle-down theory, and all of the tenets speak to the impact of governmental or societal systems on personal relationships, and the other two forms of interracial relationships stand on the foundation of romantic relationships. So what are the other two?
Okay, the other 2 tenets are interracial romantic relationships are a barometer of societal attitudes towards race and racial differences. Tenet number 2 is that interracial romantic relationships are a catalyst for racial identity development, for the racial identity development process that does not occur in same-race relationships. So because you are 2 people of different races, one person might be on a journey of learning more about their race in a way that they probably never would have experienced if they weren't in that relationship. And then the third tenet is that external factors such as family, friends, and society, and the racial hierarchy exert undue pressure and stress on partners in interracial romantic relationships, forcing the development of coping strategies for relational turbulence. So in other words, the individuals who are involved in interracial romantic relationships are dealing with pressure that would not be present in the same way as they would be in a same-race relationship. And so now they have to identify ways to cope, identify ways to manage, and maybe even identify ways to preserve their relationship that they wouldn't have to deal with if they were of the same race.
Okay. So frequently, our most significant interracial communication occurs at school or work because a lot of people have segregated social circles, and so school or work, and you acknowledge in the book that businesses, universities, and other organizations historically have played critical roles in establishing and maintaining institutional and systemic racism, where the primary beneficiaries are white, heterosexual, Christian, cisgender males. That's a quote. While noting that positive, effective interracial communication in all spaces is only possible if everyone is willing to do their part. So my question for you is, what motivation do you think these entities, businesses, universities, and other organizations, what motivation do you think that they might have to attempt to eradicate if they have benefited from the maintenance of institutional and systemic racism?
Well, unfortunately, I think that the bottom line is the dollar. Companies are driven by money, and all institutions are in some way driven by money. And they might feel that if they are going to level the playing field, become more diverse, then those entities, as far as like people making donations or people who are buying their products, they might not want to do that anymore. And I feel that I just want us all to get along. I want everybody to be represented. I want everyone to play, everyone to be a part of, whatever these entities are. I don't have an entity myself to, say that I can, foster this inclusiveness. I do it under, other structures. And I think that if companies were to encourage that diversity, then they're going to have not just diversity of mind, but of culture, experiences, and realities, and who knows what can be produced as a result of that.
Okay. So given the lessons that we learned from the summer of 2020, what would you say is the most important thing that each of us can do in an attempt to dismantle racism?
Well, do the friendship inventory, reflect on your own relationships, and just kind of think about what role each one of us has played in perpetuating these systems. If we have different kinds of privilege, I don't have racial privilege, but I have societal privilege due to not my finances, but due to me being a professor, working at a university. What can I do to empower someone else? What can I do to provide someone else with opportunities that I was not provided? So I think that we all should use our privileges in ways that are going to advance other people. Just be open to exposing yourself to races, ethnicities, and cultures that are different from your own. I have integrated that into my classroom where I have students find cultural events to attend, and I try to attend them, this is pre-COVID. I try to attend them as well so that I can just be exposed. So I think just opening up our minds and being committed to it, not just doing it as a one-time thing. Just being consistent with it, and then just being open to like establishing those relationships and connections with people, but in very authentic and genuine ways. Not like you're going to sit down and say, okay, so it's Black History Month. I need to establish 2 good friendships with 2 Black people by February 28th, and I might just keep those to the middle of the year, and then we have Cinco de Mayo coming. No, don't do it that way. Just expose yourself to these different opportunities, and if these relationships emerge naturally, just let them flow, nurture them, find those commonalities, and do what you can to preserve them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we've got time for questions from the audience.
It's fun. Got the microphone relay. All right, got some questions?
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Marcel. I'm a junior, and we recently read one of your chapters in our class.
Oh.
Yeah, it was good, girl. It was good.
Oh, thank you.
But
Don't move.
Okay.
my question to you is, I know we read somewhere that interracial communication is supposed to be interpersonal.
Yeah.
But do you ever get scared talking about race? I know that you said that your approach is inviting, but sometimes when you speak to some things, and it can get to a point of where it may be okay, let me start decking and ducking for real. Does it ever do you ever get scared or fearful when if a conversation gets that far about race, or you're no, not really?
No, not really. I mean, there may be some times where I'm like, ooh, this might not be the place or time for me to talk about race. So I just kind of shifted a little bit, but I'm always ready to talk about race. Maybe it's not a fault. I see it as my calling, my destiny, what I'm supposed to be doing in life. So I enjoy it. Maybe too much, I don't know.
Do you have any other questions?
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Jada, if you haven't already met me. So I just wanted to ask, was there a particular moment where there was something everything, the entire institution of race and the system of it, that it clicked for you? Because for me personally, it was the incidents of the summer of 2020. And even though that's more recent, that's when it clicked for me that this is a system, and it's not just one person of one race is mean to another person of another race. So is there a moment where it clicked for you?
There's so many that always click, but I'll never forget this one incident where I had in high school. So my parents told me when I was young that people are not going to like you. They didn't say they're not going to like you because of race, but they said they're not going to like you. And I was like, no. I said, everybody likes everybody. I mean, I really did think that we live in this happy little world and everybody just loves everybody. And so then that was shattered when I went to high school, and I was in my English class. I loved to write. Obviously I still love to write. And so we were supposed to write a mystery, and I forget who we were studying, but whoever it was inspired me to write this murder mystery. And so I wrote it, and this is back before there were computers. I mean, they had computers in businesses, but not at home. And so I sat up that night and I wrote my little story. I turned it in, and I was so proud. I stayed up till midnight. Back then, that was like real late. And so I stayed up until midnight writing my paper. I turned it in, and the teacher had all the papers. She graded them, and then she was going around passing the papers back. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get my paper back. I'm so excited. And she asked me to step outside in the hallway. So naive me, I'm thinking, oh, she doesn't want to embarrass everybody else. She wants to tell me outside how great it was. And so then, so I'm like, going outside, and then she was like, where did you copy this from? I said, copy it? I said, I did not copy this. I said, I wrote it myself. I stayed up all night till midnight. That wasn't late, but I said, I stayed up until midnight writing this. You can ask my parents. And so she just, kind of like looked at me sideways, and then we went back in the classroom, and I was so devastated. She held my paper for a week. And then when she gave it back to me, she gave me an A-. And I was like, okay, I knew it was racial, and that hurt me to my core, because I was like, I'm writing myself, I'm expressing, and that was a good mystery. At some point I want to develop it as a novel, but I gotta have the time to do it. But I was just devastated, because I was like, this woman did not think I was good enough to write that. And then something similar happened when I was in my master's program, first semester, graduate student. I knew I wasn't like the best, but I was trying. It was really hard for me to grasp all these theories, but now I have that on lock. And I remember at the end of the semester, my professor wrote me a handwritten 3-page letter. She had beautiful handwriting, but what she wrote was a hot mess. She pretty much told me that I did not deserve to be in graduate school, that this was not the space for me. I was crushed. I don't think I ever told my mom. Eventually I did. I didn't tell my professors. I just kept it to myself. And I wish I had kept that letter. But I went on, I finished the program. She did not get tenure. just so we're clear, she did not get tenure. She was asked to leave. And I saw her many years after I got my Ph.D. And then I went back to my alma mater, and I saw her at a conference, and I got tenure at the institution where she did not get tenure at. And then she and I were headed somewhere, some activity associated with the conference, and she was just like, oh my goodness. And I was like, hi. And then she was like, well, she tried to recruit me to come work with her. And I was like, oh no, thank you, I'm happy where I am. The audacity. I thought, wow. So I didn't mention the letter to her, I should have, but I will never forget that. So there are a lot of micro moments like that. That was a macro moment, where things have happened that remind me that I live in a world where people will always see me as a black woman, but I'm a proud black woman, and I work hard for what I do. And I just know that this is my space, this is where I'm supposed to be, and if people can't deal with that, then that's on them, and it doesn't have anything to do with me at all. And so I know that my experiences, they're unique to me, but I think that there are other people who can resonate with those realities, and I want to do whatever I can to just offer insight into those experiences, and then do what I can to tease that out and make it better. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ajwa, and I know you've talked about how you like to talk about race, and I do know you, so I don't doubt that. I know you really like to talk about race, and you probably always knew you were going to write a book about race. But I guess I want to ask, what was your biggest motivation? Was there a pivotal moment when you knew I was really going to write this book?
I'm sorry, what?
Was there a pivotal moment when you knew that I was really going to write this book? At what point did you know that I'm really going to write this book?
When my advisor asked me to write the book. And I guess the foundation has been laid, obviously, for a very long time. I ran into her, I won't say it was by chance, but I ran into her at a conference. I was going into a dining area, and she was coming in, and she was like, hey, can you talk? And I was like, sure. And then she said, I'm editor of the series. Would you like to write a book? And I'm always flattered, and I really should take a step back, because you already know this. I have a bad habit of always saying yes to everything. And I was like, of course, I would be honored to write a book. I had never written a solo authored book, at all. And so, we're sitting there having breakfast, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can write on this, and I can write on that, da 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 da. And this was all off the cuff. And then, we left, and she said she was get me in touch with the, the publisher, and I would get the contract. And I was like, what did I tell her I was going to write about? I was like, I remember like the, the essence of it, but I was like, oh, now I need to like really come through. And then January was when I got the contract, and so that was in 2020. So that was January, and then I had just moved here to Louisiana, and so I'm becoming acclimated to the culture. Then we had Mardi Gras, still trying to figure that out, and then COVID came. And I was like, oh, forget the book. I need to know what's going on in the world. And the world shut down. And then we had the racial unrest. And then it was some point shortly thereafter that I realized that this is why I wasn't able to write the book right then, because so much was happening. And I was like seeing everything unfold, and I wanted to like capture as much of that as I could in the book without, in its truest form. And I think that doing that really helped me set a foundation for what I believe captures what I have always thought when it comes to racism. I mean, because my background is interpersonal communication, and I think that that interpersonal lens is really important to addressing all of our isms in society.
I think we've got time for 2 more questions.
Hi, my name is Hypes. So you have expressed a number of personal experiences on the racism part that sort of affected you as you're growing up. But I wanted to know, how did those personal experiences influence your professional knowledge in contributing to this book? And how were you also able to decouple those personal experiences and looking at the book from a scholarly perspective?
Okay, I think I understood everything you just said. I would say that all of my research that I have done does come through personal experience. Whether it's personal interest, and so I think my students know, and my colleagues and my friends know that if I'm watching something in the media, I really have to control myself, because I'm like, oh, that's a good essay. Like, hey, how about you just like sit here and just enjoy, watching this trash TV, whatever it is, Real Housewives of Potomac or what. I do watch it, and I do record them. But the approach that I take to my research, I don't know if people have heard the phrase, research is me search, and that's kind of like what it is for me. And so I like take my experiences, and I'm inspired by them, and sometimes I can, I'm inspired by them. I take my own personal experiences and use that almost as I don't want to say as a barometer, but I know that my experiences they may be unique to me, but I can talk to other people, and I can see that what I'm experiencing, I need to write about, because I'm seasoned enough in the field to be able to articulate these issues. For example, many years ago, I wrote an article about being called Dr. Harris. I mean, I prefer that, and it's not an ego thing, it's a respect thing, and it's a cultural thing. And I won't go into details about that, but other Black women and other women of color and women, period, who have their Ph.D. oftentimes struggle with that. Somebody might email you and say, Mrs. So-and-so, Mrs. Harris, that's my mom. Well, she's Mrs. Smith now, but do you want to talk to her? I don't respond in that way, but we have to essentially fight for our space and our titles. And that an incident happened when I first got my Ph.D. that articulated for me that this is like an issue for me. And then 7 years later or so, that was when I was able to write an article about that. A friend had a special issue in a journal, and she's like, yeah, do you want to contribute? Of course I do. I'm working on, I was tenured by then, but anyway, she was like, yeah, do you want to contribute? I was like, yes, I do. And I was like, I know exactly what I want to write about, and I found the theory to help explain that. And so, I think that there are opportunities that come up where, people will say, hey, can you contribute to, this book? Can you do this article? And then I reflect on my recent experiences, because that also helps me manage my time well. So I'm like, okay, what I can pull from that and, hopefully make a sound argument. And then there are things that maybe I haven't personally experienced that I've heard other people talk about, and I want to, contextualize that through research.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Mia.
Hi,
Nice
Mia.
to meet you, Dr.
Nice to meet
Harris.
you too.
So I have a question about something that you mentioned. Now, you talked about friend groups. Now, when you talked about dismantling racism and evaluating your friend group, seeing how truly diverse they are. Now, my question for you is, do you believe that if a person does not have a diverse friend group, do you necessarily think that that is racism, or do you believe that that is just people drifting to people who they relate mostly to? Prime example, I'll just use myself as an example. I grew up in a predominantly black community. I went to a predominantly black middle school and high school. Then I turned around and went to an HBCU for college. Safe to say, majority of my close friends are black. But I do not think that I don't necessarily think that I don't think that that is racism. I work with coworkers who are of different racial ethnicities and backgrounds and everything like that. But what do you think about people who have predominantly segregated friend groups, and do you necessarily think that that is always racism, or do you think that people should strive to break that?
No and yes. I don't think that it's racism at all. Sometimes it might be a defense mechanism or you're protecting yourself from institutional racism, and then sometimes it's you just feel more comfortable and you can just really be yourself around people who are like you. And what I'm just really encouraging people to do is just to think about, like, what are your motivations for the friends that you have? Because if you are consciously saying, I don't want to be friends with people from this particular racial group, then that's a problem. And I want us to just be open to the idea, the possibility of having these interracial friendships. I mean, because I do have I have different friend groups and whatnot. Well, I don't really have a friend group here, so I'm like accepting applications. No, I'm just kidding. But I think that having those relationships are really important, and I would not at all say that if a person's friend group is not diverse, that it makes them racist. It just could be like just geography, just like the path that your life has taken. But just like just sit back and think, okay, so maybe it was circumstances that just led me to have these people in my friend group who look like me, and just be open to the possibility of that potentially changing. There was a second part to your question. Do you remember what it was? No. Okay.
All right, everybody. Are there any, I can take like one last burning question if we have it. It's burning.
Okay, it's burning. Hey.
Hi.
Thanks so much. This has been great. As was brought up a couple of times, the workplace, school, institutional environments are where interpersonal or interracial communication is really significantly happening. So I was wondering, in your research, have you come across anything as it relates to sort of DEI initiatives and what sort of works and doesn't work in that context to facilitate positive and beneficial interracial communication? And then secondly, are you worried about those initiatives moving forward in terms of corporations, institutions not investing in those kinds of practices?
Okay. Yeah, the work that I have done has primarily been proposing that that people out there in the real world take what we are doing as communication scholars and apply it to the workplace. And so I'm not like trying to promote my work, but I have a model. It's called the Confronting Racial Microaggressions model that a graduate student, a then graduate student, and I developed this back in 2011. It was based on student reaction papers and an assignment. And what I realized was that there were stages that people can go through to understand that this is how I can confront racism, and this is really important. And so they were maybe not confronting grandparents. I'm not trying to like have people be excommunicated from their families or anything like that. But this assignment allowed the students to really identify their comfort level, as well as identify effective communication skills to do their role, do their part, in addressing racism, however comfortable they are. During the racial unrest of 2020, several companies reached out to me, and these were because of former students that I had. And they're like, I remember taking your class. Well, so they need to reach out to me because I still do consult. But anyway, they reached out to me and they said, can you do this workshop for my company? And I've done it. I wish that we had more opportunities to really see how effective the workshops are that are actually taking place in the workplace, because some people will say that they've done it and the organization hasn't changed, and so we need to find out what exactly. I'm not going to do any investigating or anything like that, but what exactly is going on. But I remember, and the reason I shared that model is because the one time when I did do that workshop and I shared it with them, they had a handout and I said, these are the stages and this is how it was born out of my classroom. There was a black woman who participated, and she was like, I thank you for that. She said, I wish that I had that model 20 years ago. And so that means that there was a powerful moment that she had in the past where she wasn't happy with the outcome, and if she had had the communication skills, she would have been able to handle it. I don't know if it was personal or if it was in the workplace or what, but she would have had the knowledge and the skills necessary to kind of address it. And so my research has not dealt with DEI in terms of not the practical implications of it, but how people manage it, but the importance of changing the way people think and creating an environment that's going to be much more inviting. And yes, I'm concerned with what's going on in society because it's pretty much telling us that people don't matter. It doesn't, so you don't matter in the workplace, you can matter in your own home, but when you leave your home, we don't care about you. And I don't think that's right. I mean, like I said, I just want us all to get along, and I just want us to just like each other, and maybe love each other.
Well, with Valentine's coming up, that's quite the sentiment to end on. Dr. Harris, thank you so much for sharing,
Thank you.
Your work and your work on this book and some of the other work that you've done. Nikki, thank you so much for moderating. If you guys don't know, it means whenever someone moderates, they take that book home and they go through it page by page and really kind of dissect it and figure out what a good conversation is going to be and what kind of questions we can ask. So again, thank you, Nikki.
Yes.
And I'd also like to thank the Riley Center staff. The Riley Center is mostly run by students, our interns and graduate assistants. There is no Riley Center without them, and so thank you, everyone.
Yes.
They're all around us. And just really quickly, the mission of the Riley Center is to address contemporary issues in media and public affairs, to enable civic engagement and leadership, and then also to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this event certainly advances those thoughts. And so I really appreciate that you came and spoke with us. For those of you who would like to rewatch this show or look at different pieces of it, you can find it on our YouTube channel. Also, if you want to find out about some of our future events, you can subscribe to all of our social media. It's some form of LSU Riley Center on Facebook, Instagram, and on X. It's still strange to say that. And just so you know, we've got a few more events coming up this semester. I would like for Adam to share an event that we're supporting. It's not our event, but we are definitely very excited about it because it's related to this topic.
Hi everyone, I'm Adam. I'm an intern for the Riley Center, and I'm also on this year's Bateman team. So basically we're hosting an event. It's a panel discussion. It's called Embracing Louisiana's Melting Pot, a multicultural panel discussion. It's going to take place here in the Holiday Forum on February 20th at 3:30 p.m. It's going to be a little hour-long discussion. I'm inviting all of you to attend if you want to. It's going to be about multicultural storytelling. Panelists are going to talk about their different ways that they navigate being a part of different cultures and kind of navigating between them. And yeah, we're going to have audience questions. It's going to be really interesting and it's going to be interactive. So if y'all want to come out February 20th, 3:30, it's going to take place here. Thank you.
And it's 100% student organized, and the Bateman team is or rather the Bateman competition is a national one, and we've had a number of really great teams. We also have another book talk coming up on February 27th at 3:30 p.m. That's a Tuesday as well, and it's with Dr. Ruth Moon on her book, Authoritarian Journalism, a book talk with Ruth Moon. And just so you know, she's done some really great qualitative ethnographic research in Rwanda and looking at how journalists interact with different types of governments, particularly authoritarian governments. So it's going to be a really exciting talk. And then we haven't set the date exactly yet, but the 2024 Bro Symposium is actually going to be on AI in our mass comm industries. So how AI is impacting each of our kind of concentration areas, whether that be PR, advertising, political communication, and journalism. So it's going to be exciting, and also our students that are planning this event at the Riley Center, we're going to do a little experiment. Half of them are going to use AI to plan the event, and the other half are going to use our traditional strategies. So they themselves will do a panel, and we'll have panels that focus on sort of the ethical issues related to AI, as well as the practical and how we are using AI, because don't forget, we're not getting ready for AI, it's here. One other thing and last thing before I say thank you and let you go, we will be sending out a survey to all of you, and so please keep your eye out for that. And it really helps us if you fill that out to let us know things that you're interested in hearing about from the Riley Center and the Manship School, and also, you know, how the time of day worked out, the day of the week, et cetera. It helps us with all of our future planning. So I hope that you'll do that for us, and we look forward to hearing all of your suggestions. So again, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you, and we hope to see you again soon.
The raffle. Yeah, the raffle.
Oh gosh, I almost forgot the raffle. Okay. We should let Dr. Harris pull.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Yeah, so I bought these and I was like, hey, let me see who I can give these to. So here we go. All right. The first number is.
Here, read the name on the back.
Oh, the name. Oh, okay, that's easy. Is that Aubrey?
Yes.
Aubrey Russell. Has left
Where are the
building.
books? Where do we send folks to get books?
We're going to meet at the registration table in the back, and we're going to hand all y'all's books after.
All right.
So don't leave without your book.
Okay, sorry, Aubrey. Sarah Breck. All right, Sarah got a book. Okay, you get a book. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll just go ahead and maybe give away 19 books. How about that? No one. Oh. No one. Wait a minute. Taiwo? Or Taiwo? Taiwo? All right. Okay. They sat next to each other. All right. Okay, next one is Carolyn Tarver. Where's Carolyn? Okay. Make sure you get your book. Let me keep track. How many is that? 3 people? Okay. Suzanne Bess. All right. Dr. Winfield. Ooh. Okay, I'm just calling these names out. Let me count first. 1, 2, 3. I think we had 5. Okay, only 14 more to go. Okay. Adwa. And I know the folks in my class are like, oh, please let me get a book. Okay. Marcel Harley. All right.
Dr. Broussard.
Dr. Broussard. Tiana? Yeah, where's Tiana? All right. Okay, she's in my class too, so I know she liked that. Okay. Okay, Lauren L. All right, so we need, hopefully there'll be some names called on this side. All right, let's see. Dave, Bessie, or is it Bessie? Okay, okay, all right. That was so kind of y'all. Okay, thank you. All right, Judith Sylvester. Dr. Sylvester. All right. Okay, Sean Griffin. Oh. He was excited. Oh, I won't repeat what he said, but he was excited. Okay, Caden. Is Caden here? No? All right. No, I'm not counting. I am not counting. Let me hold up. Well, let's just like do two more, and if not, I'll just buy a couple more. Question mark. All right. Okay. Hopefully, it's on. This person's on this side. Brittany. Okay. You jammed your last name all up in here. What's your last name? Okay, we'll go with that. Okay. Is it
Donna?
Donna Lee? Oh, okay. Yes, Miss Lee, you get your own copy. Okay, then I'm gonna stop because I haven't been counting. Okay. Kennedy Carter.
All right, she's all the way in the back.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yay. Thank you for coming, Kennedy. I know her. Okay, this is the last one, and I hope that this is okay. Is it Oh.
Wig.
Yeah, that. Okay.
It kind of looks like a Mitchell.
Okay.
Mitchell.
Mitchell, what's your last name?
Haley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
All right.
Okay. I think that is it. And thank you all for coming. I do really appreciate it. I do not know how many.
I'll go with the copies of the covers.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to see where.
I wish I knew how to work it, but we could just take it off and then.
Great job.